It is indeed a wonderful morning outside. Glad that you are all able to come out today. Would like to start with our report from the Instructional Council update. It's a good report. I read it, but I just want to hear you talk about it.
And that one I did right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Public comment. I forgot. Do we have anyone here for public comment? See, that's what happened when you get used to everybody's faces. You don't see no different face out there. You go past public comment and go right to what you're supposed to do. I'm ready, yes.
Thank you. I am Cindy Peck, School Reform Facilitator for the Middle School K-8 Division here of Grand Rapids Public Schools. And I have been chairing Instructional Council this year. And we did meet last week, Thursday, April 16th, and the agenda involved a curriculum update from Maggie Malone, who's the curriculum arts supervisor. And so she shared with the council an update, kind of the development of curriculum in the arts department or fine arts department over the last couple of years. It specifically involved her sharing samples of the district curriculum, a lesson plan template that teachers in the arts department use, learning objectives that are involved, that really are all included in that lesson plan template, vocabulary that teachers are very purposefully infusing into their instruction, and connections that that vocabulary has across the different contents, and the state standards in some of the activities. We had a pretty lively discussion about how all of us remember arts being delivered in our elementary and high school careers, and art is very different now the way that it is delivered. So it was a lively conversation. We did particularly talk about how teachers are very much involved in the process of reflecting on the arts curriculum and updating, making tweaks in the activities and in the instruction and the way that it was delivered. And so that was a real positive sharing with the Instructional Council. Additionally, we did something a little different, and that is that we did meet at City High School instead of meeting at GRPS University. And the purpose behind meeting at City High School is City, a couple years ago, submitted some draft syllabi to the council around courses that they were proposing to implement, and they did implement some of those courses. And what we wanted was to provide the opportunity for teachers to come back and share with us how the implementation has gone. And it was easier for us to go to City and meet with staff than it was for City teachers to come to us. Ultimately, we did hear from their staff around the courses that are listed in your summary there. Research strategies, physics, psychology, and the MYP EPIC 4. Those are all courses that are required, and students are involved in those courses. The way that they came to the council initially, a couple of them have had some pretty significant changes made to them, but they are all running, and City does continue to revise some of the curriculum to make sure that it is in line with the IB standards and the requirements that IB has in place. And that was the essence of our meeting. Next month, we will be meeting at Innovation High School for the same purpose, so that we can make sure that we touch base with staff around a curriculum that was submitted last year, or actually syllabi that were submitted last year to the council.
Could you just give me a little bit more detail on the your art department in terms of the goals? What type of goals are we looking at? When you say arts, are we talking about music, theatrics, or? So
specifically what we talked about was music and visual arts.
Okay.
Is what we talked about specifically. And I would ask that that Ms. Malone could provide you kind of more of the detail behind what the curriculum actually looks like. If you want more information, I'm confident we can make that happen.
Yeah, the reason why I'm interested is because when John and I attended a conference, and it was interesting that they highlighted the arts, and there was music that the kids were playing. It was beautiful to see the arts being displayed in a conference which showed all children. And I don't know where we are in terms of music in our schools anymore. I don't know where we are in terms of the theatrics, in terms of plays. I used to know that every year the senior class will put a play on, so I don't even know if that's even done anymore. So that's what I was pretty much interested in hearing, if we're doing that, and if we're not, is there a possibility we can get back to doing that?
So what we have put together is the plan for next year in fine arts, and in fact, I just submitted it to the superintendent, that kind of, it outlines what offerings that we will have in each building, elementary, middle, and high school. And the changes in curriculum had to do with our push to get consistency across classrooms, and to also infuse some, not all, literacy standards where we could. We had the district academic plan, and we had the 4 learning outcomes. And our goal was to ensure that our teachers were aware of those learning outcomes and could begin to embed them in their lesson plans. So we're hoping over time we'll build the muscle and capacity to infuse more reading, and art history, those kinds of things in our art classes. What you would see immediately, however, is a new lesson plan template that would say no longer is it sufficient for kids just to come in and just engage in any kind of art. They need to connect the art activities to the standards, and that template lays out what the learning outcomes are, and it has teachers reflect upon key elements of a lesson, and that is what's being implemented now.
Yes,
My
How
apologies
you
for
doing?
being late. I was here at 8.
I know, you're on time.
I'll get it figured out. I didn't know, I went on that Austin City Exchange, and Dana at the Grand Rapids Art Museum, he had a colleague at the that works with the Austin Public Schools. And so I've been eager to talk about that. It's called Mind Pop. And what was so exciting about it was he was working with art methodologies across the curriculum, exactly what you're talking about, and doing it with quite depth. And it was it's a nonprofit partner organization that works with teachers across the content area to introduce art methodologies to learn their content area. So I think it would be exciting to maybe look at their model and see if you
Certainly.
couldn't
Certainly.
glean some great practices from it. But I believe in it firmly, and it's really exciting to see that you're taking the leadership on that here. It's great.
Any other questions?
The other comment I would make is that, when we see the multicultural nature of our district, so for example, African American, you look at music, art, Latino, Mexican, Puerto Rican, Dominican, and so forth, Irish, Dutch. I think that there's a lot that we can do that, obviously curriculum-wise, but also that really encompasses the diversity and affirms. So as we look to those kinds of things, what I would be interested in too is seeing how it connects to each grade level. So from elementary to middle school to high school. I know that I've been at some of the competitions for choir and stuff, and it's nice when they can take those skills and develop them, but to know that they somehow connect. So that would be interesting to continue to wrestle with.
So one of the things that I think our district has that is sometimes unique, and that is the diversity. What we want to do is get better at displaying our diverse backgrounds and using that and growing our appreciation. So hopefully you'll see more of that over time.
Like a mariachi band?
Well, we did have that.
Or is that too outside the box?
Oh, absolutely not.
It would be
Absolutely
interesting
not.
to see those kinds of things. Obviously, we
Absolutely.
like strings, like violins, but una guitarra would be kind of nice too.
Yeah.
So,
I thought there were strings in the mariachi band. What are you talking
well, they
about
are.
here?
Well, they are, but
But
Stretching it a little
if
bit.
the committee would like, I could have Maggie present next time to go over the next year's plan, if you like.
That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, next we're going to have the reports to the committee, starting with the standing reports.
Is it Loop?
No.
Which one is it? Yeah.
How are these?
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
You've asked me to present these executive summary.
Look at it.
Got a copy.
Have an extra one? So I could give it to Dana.
Mr. Moody, members of the committee, I'm here today just to give a brief overview of two evaluations that our audit department completed for the 2013-14 school year, the Schools of Hope Reading Program and then the Loop after-school program. And I'm here today with Ms. Irma Lopez. Irma has administrative responsibility for both of these programs. When our office does program evaluations, we work very closely with administrative staff to make sure, first of all, that the evaluation is asking the right questions, that it asks the kind of questions that provide relevant data for program improvement. And then throughout the school year, as the data starts to come in, we work closely with them to make sure that the program is being operated in fidelity to what it was intended for. And that data is being collected. They often play a role in that. And then when the evaluation report is complete, I typically do the evaluations over the summer, finish them in early fall, and then we go through a dissemination process. And that first step is always to meet with administrative staff, and then goes to the people that we report to, which in this case would be Mr. Mel Atkins Jr., and then it goes to the either academic committee or cabinet for their review, superintendent, and then it gets the agenda for this committee. So that just kind of gives you an overview of the process that we use in evaluating, disseminating these reports. Once they get presented to the board, they become public documents. In both cases, both of these programs, we work closely with partners. In the case of Schools of Hope, it's the United Way of West Michigan, and in Loop, it's the partners that the providers that we work closely with. So both of them have a deep interest in seeing these reports and in discussing the implications for their work as well. I think today I'd like to start with the Schools of Hope reading program. And I'm going to be talking just very briefly about the key findings, which are on the very first page. Again, the board has copies of the full report, which you've had for a few weeks now. But as is your request, my presentation will be basically just off the executive summary.
Yes, thank you.
And Irma will respond to some of the areas of maybe concern or questions and talk about some of the things that programs have been doing this year to address some of those. So first of all, based on the documentation that's maintained by program staff, there were a total of 472 students in grades 3 through 3 who participated in the program during the 2013-14 school year, and that program operated at 13 elementary schools. That's a considerable decrease from the 648 who participated in 2012-13. Irma will address that in just a minute. Participating students were fairly evenly divided between males and females. And when you look at ethnic proportions, they generally mirrored those of the district in grades 1 through 3. A little over 1 in 4 Schools of Hope participants had one or more diagnosed special ed disabilities. Tutoring sessions are typically about 30 minutes long. Students participated in a mean average of 27 sessions, so that would compute to about 13 and a half hours during the year. If you consider the total scope of students' educational experience, that's a relatively small amount. So that always gives you pause when you're looking at results and to be sure that what you're looking at here is a result of this program and not other interventions. That's always a difficult thing to do in educational evaluation. But when you look at the program district-wide, there were a total of almost 13,000 sessions, and that represents over 6,000 hours of volunteer service. The average conditional growth index reading scores of mentored students was greater than that of the comparison group. So these are scores on the MAP test from both fall to spring, so we're measuring growth here. And the comparison group is non-mentored students in the same grades and same schools who had similar fall MAP reading scores. So it's a pretty tight comparison group. The average CGI growth score placed mentored students in the 54th percentile when compared to the national norming group. So I just want to make sure that you understand, that doesn't mean that they end up at the 54th percentile. It means when you look at their growth and how that growth compares to national norm for other students who started with those same scores, those same grade levels, that growth can also be computed on a scale, and that can put them at the 54th percentile, so it's greater than average growth. The average CGI growth score of the comparison group was the 50th percentile, so essentially the same as the average growth of students in the national norming group. The mean percent of days attended increased slightly for Schools of Hope participants between the 2012-13 and 13-14 school years. This increase was matched precisely by the comparison group. A total of 121 mentors completed a survey during the second half of the school year. A large majority of these had very positive perceptions of the program. Just a couple examples. 92% rated the value of the program to students as either good or excellent. And a large majority, almost all, 96%, indicated they expected to continue their involvement next year. That would be this current school year. So having that kind of continuation is really important for mentors, as you know. 11 Schools of Hope coordinators completed the survey during the spring months, and they also had very positive comments about the way the program operated this year, the communication that they had with classroom teachers, the quality of books, and the support they received from school and district staff. There are just a handful of recommendations, 4 of them. First 3 are basically just continuing to build on positive things that we found this year. So those are the Lexile scores that are generated by the MAP reading test are increasingly being used by the coordinators to identify books that students can comfortably read, and this should be encouraged and training provided where needed. Second, mid-year MAP scores are being used to monitor the progress of Schools of Hope students and adjust, if necessary, their book lists and the type of assistance they are receiving, and this too should be encouraged and continued. Third, the Schools of Hope program made use this year of one-page profiles for students who qualify for participation. That's something our office produced. And they're used to identify students for the program and to also inform the coordinators of each student's relative reading strengths and weaknesses based on the fall test. Several coordinators mentioned the value of these profiles in their surveys. Either these forms or others should be used to enhance communication between the coordinators, teachers, and mentors. We know for a fact that that kind of coordination and communication is critical to making sure that the mentoring that students receive is appropriate for them. The final recommendation is that several schools had low numbers of participants, and in their survey responses, several coordinators requested that the Schools of Hope program and their role as coordinators be clarified to principals and teachers. So it's recommended that the Schools of Hope program staff work with executive directors of elementary and K-8 and middle schools to make sure that the purpose of the program and the role of the coordinators are fully communicated to all principals and teachers. With such clarification, it is expected that the coordinators will be able to devote more of their time to matching students with mentors.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
These are just recommendations, right?
Pardon?
These are just recommendations.
Correct.
So nothing has taken place at this point.
Actually, it has, so that's why Irma here, and she's going to address some of these recommendations, some of the things that have been done over the past year to address these, because again, this is for 2013-14. We're now in the 14-15 school year, so it's appropriate for Irma to talk about what's been done in the meantime.
So, they say, be able to devote more of their time. What sort of things were they doing other than what they?
They are like paras in the building, so they assist with recess duty, moving students from classroom to classroom, lunch duty, a lot of other duties that's assigned.
Sign, yeah. Thank you. Go ahead.
So the recommendations that Dr. DeBoer gave in the report, we met earlier in the year to go over the report, like he said. We also met with Mr. Atkins and reviewed those as well, put a plan in place, met with the executive directors. They gave me some time on the principal agenda to meet with principals and discuss the role and the importance of making sure that the time the coordinators are supposed to dedicate to the students get interrupted as least as possible. We also have increased the communication electronically and verbally with principals, keeping them updated on what is going on with School of Hope in the program, with meeting with the site coordinators. We meet with them monthly. We're also working closer with the curriculum division. Roseanne Walsh has come in and present, but more like than just a presentation to the site coordinators. It was kind of a workshop dialogue with what strategies they should be working on with first through third grade, which matches what we're doing in the district, and the pacing guide. We've also have had Dr. DeBoer come in and review the report with the site coordinators during a meeting as well.
On those several schools that had low performance in terms of their participants, I know you have some things down here, but what are some other things that you did that you didn't get a chance to get to?
Some of there's various reasons why that's happening besides being pulled. Also, sometimes mentors are actually volunteers who come in and place, so there's sometimes mobility, sometimes they can't show up. We've also had mobility with staff changing positions or leaving to other jobs, so that's also has been something we're trying to focus on.
Couple of questions. Yeah. One of the questions is about the long-term effect on the literacy practices. So you're measuring the students that year, but you have the sense that the impact of it may not be recognized until over time. So are these students participating multiple years? And is there any look at if they are, whether we see maybe a larger increase or we can measure the impact, over a long term?
The students are recommended based on their MAP scores. So if they have an increase that takes them out of the qualifications, then they're not in there the following year. But what we have started this year as well is keeping track of which students are using what strategies how many times to see if the impact, we're trying to make that correlation more obvious or trying to pinpoint the correlation with the increase. To Schools of Hope, like Dr. DeBoer said, that is very difficult, but that's something that we've started to keep track of this year.
Yeah, well, I believe so firmly in the program. I mean, introducing literacy practices, again, with another adult is huge towards growth. My other question is about the curriculum and the book list. Other research has shown how important it is to affirm children's identity in their literacy practices, and this goes to even, what Reverend Matias was talking about in terms of the arts. So is there sensitivity towards the books chosen that could affirm the identities of the children? And connected to that, if there's a language other than English spoken at home, is there any work with the curriculum team to recognize and affirm that native language? Because that also is a very a key factor towards improving engaging children in literacy practices.
That is something that we haven't done further than what the district does. We lexile the books, and it's books that we have in our libraries, but I will definitely look at that. Thank you.
Who makes the choice of selecting the books?
That's done through the district. So the librarian at the school, we go with the books we have there. We also have our academic coordinator that works in my department. So we work on getting additional books for that. So we'll definitely keep that in mind.
So that's at the district level and the school level, but at the individual student level, that decision is typically made by the coordinator, is it not?
Yes, for the actual students when they're in the session, it's done by the coordinator based on the student's Lexile score.
Could they choose from what's available in
Yes,
our library?
like these are your Lexile books. Which one do you want to focus on?
Actually, we've been hiring a specialist. We hired actually a person that is a Caldecott judge to help us start getting
Nice.
Books into our library and updating our library. And we've been keeping Common Core in place in mind too. So we've been trying to balance out our purchases so half would be informational and half would be narrative. But we've been trying to make a deliberate effort. with bringing more cultural materials, and one would be the book that we shared with our fifth grade students on One Crazy Summer.
Yep.
We didn't know how that would go. We're launching another book that has a special cultural emphasis, but it has been greatly accepted. We still have kids blogging even though we've stopped with our programming. So we will continue that, and over the summer, we get that consultant back in to help us with that.
What was that, called the what?
Caldecott Judge.
I'm unfamiliar. How do you spell that, Caldecott?
I think it's C-A.
I mean, that's a
It's a
person or-
national award for children's books.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's like the Pulitzer for children's book kind of
Yeah.
thing, yeah.
So she
Okay.
comes in and she evaluates. I've had her focus on, recently on the Central Innovation Library to make sure that that is up. Now we're working on the Union Library to make sure that we have materials that are relevant. And what we're finding through that and starting some of the book clubs that we have begun at those schools, that we are generating more interest.
Okay, any more questions? Reading is improving, I take it.
There's been an increase with the scores and also with attendance.
Yeah, and this is actually the second straight year that we've had some very nice fall to spring growth for these students. That's greater than the comparison group. So as I mentioned, that's the big challenge you have in evaluating educational programs. Students get so many different programs, different services. A lot of these students probably also participate in the next program we're going to be talking about, which is Loop. So how do you say, well, it's due to this program and not a combination of things? So the more years in a row you can say, you can show that students who participate in these programs are showing greater growth in a comparison group, the more confident you have that what you're actually seeing as a result of the interventions that are being provided. So it's encouraging. If there are no other questions, we'll go to the Loop evaluation. Start right at the beginning there, the summary of key findings. This is such a large report. I've broken this up into different sections. So the first section is on participation in the program. So in 2013-14, Loop program activities were offered at 25 sites. 17 of those were elementary schools or K-8s, 4 were middle schools, university prep, and 3 high schools. There were a total of 1,592 students who attended the program on at least 30 days. State and federal guidelines established 30 days as a threshold for qualification as what they call a frequent participant. So when we look at any of the outcomes in the evaluation, it's always about those students who are identified as frequent participants. In other words, they attended 30 or more days. 48% of after-school frequent participants were African Americans. In comparison to the district population, or the population of the 25 Loop schools, about 39% of them were African Americans, so they're somewhat overrepresented. On the other hand, although white students comprise 17% of the student population at Loop schools, 12% of after-school frequent participants were white. Hispanic students were also somewhat underrepresented. 89% of all frequent participants came from families that qualified for free or reduced price lunch, and this compares to 87% of the total population at the 25 schools. So it gives you a little bit of background on participation. And let me just mention too, I think I need to mention this every time. Participation in after-school programs like Loop is completely voluntary. Students can come and go as they please. They can attend as many days as they want. They only have to have attended the regular school day to be allowed into the program. So they can't just show up at 3:30 for the program. But they come and they go. Sometimes students will attend a whole bunch of days in the fall, then it gets cold in the winter and they decide they're not going to come. Sometimes it's due to a sibling's participation or a friend. So it's just important to understand that this program, students can come and go as they please, and participation is completely voluntary.
Is there any kind of follow-up with the student, even though it's voluntary?
Yes, we actually keep attendance. There is a state mandated for this grant that we have to keep track of attendance. It's on Easy Reports. It's a program run through MSU. And we, of course, call if students are missing a certain amount of days. They know that if they miss 3 days out of the week, they get a call that if they are not there consistently, or if there's going to be an issue with attendance and it's not something like a sick parent or something, they can be dropped from the program because we do have waiting lists at our sites since we have a 20% students that 20% of the student population from the building is what we can take in the program.
Say that again, 20% of the student population?
For the building. We
For the
can only
building.
serve the 20%.
Okay.
And you said they had dropped from the program, those who are continuing to be absent.
Yep, they will get dropped and we'll take somebody from the waiting list.
They still can come anytime. It's by their choice. They can come.
Yep, yep, except for if they miss 3 days a week or more, the parent gets a phone call. Your child has been missing 3 days. We do have a waiting list. Can we assist you? Is there something going on? If there's something going on, we try to assist when we can. And if it's going to be continuous, that the student just doesn't feel like going, then we drop them and take somebody from the waiting list.
Those students that do come, do you see a growth in terms of their academics that do come to the program and meet the program's requirement?
The answer to the short answer is yes.
Yeah, that's what I want to hear.
This year's report, and really in recent years as well, is very, very positive. So this next section on positive outcomes, it's a long section.
Yeah.
And I'll mention that we run a very good after-school program here in Grand Rapids, and we are regularly cited by the Michigan Department of Education as being a model site for the state of Michigan. So just briefly, on each of the 4 survey-based measures of life skills, a majority of parents ranging from 59% to 76% indicated that their child had been helped some or a lot by the Loop program. A somewhat lower proportion of students, ranging from 37 to 42, had the same assessment of the degree to which they had been helped on these 4 life skill measures. Numerous family events were organized by the Loop providers throughout the year, encompassing a variety of opportunities. Documentation from providers included the dates, locations, title, and number of participants. These were all well attended, with total attendees numbering in the thousands. In addition, of the 595 parents who completed surveys, 74% indicated that they had attended family events during the year, and 92% agreed that staff informed them about family events that they could go to. Results of the annual youth program quality self-assessment process showed high levels of program quality in all 4 domains, those being a safe environment, supportive environment, interaction, and engagement. On a 5-point scale, those domain scores range from 2.6 to 4.6. Surveys completed by 195 Loop program staff provide evidence of effective practices. In the area of professional development, 83% agreed or strongly agreed that they were informed about how staff at the program are expected to work with youth. A similar proportion, 84%, agreed that they were informed about what the program is trying to accomplish with youth. 68% agreed that they were in daily communication with their supervisor about how things were going. And in the area of job satisfaction, 83% agreed that they are satisfied with their job at this after-school program. Most staff, 65%, almost 2/3, indicated they attend regular staff meetings. Those range from once per week to once every 2 months. Staff meetings were described as well-organized by 81% of staff participants. 93% agree that staff meetings are open to input from staff. The program goal that was judged to be most important for the largest proportion of respondents was improve the academic achievement of youth. The program goal judged most important by the smallest proportion of respondents was engage youth in fun leisure activities otherwise unavailable to them. In the area of staff practices, 70% agree that staff listen to youth more than they talk at them. 85% agree that staff have youth help or mentor other youth in completing a project or task. 86% agree that staff are effective at providing youth with meaningful choices during activities. And on a number of similar questions, a large majority of staff indicated that youth are involved in goal setting, planning, and deciding rules and guidelines. And finally, 81% indicated that they receive positive feedback from their supervisor, either about once a month or nearly every week. 75% indicated that their supervisor gives them useful feedback about once a month or nearly every week. These surveys, by the way, are developed by Michigan State University on behalf of the Michigan Department of Education as part of a statewide evaluation. So that allows them to make comparisons across the state and also between programs. So they're the ones who develop these questions, and obviously from their perspective, they consider these to be indicators of program quality. Survey responses from students in grades 4 and up show positive attitudes about other participants, the program itself, staff, activities, making decisions in the program, and the schoolwork that they do in the program. There were 559 respondents, and of them, 84% agreed or strongly agreed that they really like coming to the program. 85% agree that they have fun when they're at the program. 87% agree that they feel safe. And 87% agree that at this program, how much you improve is really important. In addition, 86% agree that the physical activities at this program are interesting and fun. 87% agree that the program helps them get their homework done. 82% agree that at this program, I have opportunities to be a leader. And 80% agree that at this program, kids and staff set goals for what should happen. So this is just some examples of some of the ways that students rate and evaluate their experiences in the program. Survey responses from 496 parents show strong support for the program and its impact on their child. The four most important reasons for deciding to enroll their child in Loop were: it's a safe place for my child after school, I hope it will help my child do better in school, it will help my child stay out of trouble, and it provides dependable after-school care. A very large majority of parents, almost all of them, 98%, agreed or strongly agreed that their child was safe in the program. 97% agreed that when they were at the program, staff are doing things with the kids. 95% agreed that staff know how to work with a child like theirs. And 97% agreed that program staff treat them in a positive way. You can hardly get more positive results than that. When they were asked to grade the program, 64% rated it excellent, 29% as good, 6% as fair, 1% as unsatisfactory, and 1% as failing. We also did surveys of classroom teachers. So these are classroom teachers of students who participated in the Loop program. And we had responses back from on behalf of 1,134 Loop participants. And those results suggest that participation in Loop has benefits that can be observed in the classroom. The area in which the greatest proportion of students showed improvement was academic performance. The area in which the least improvement was seen was attending class regularly. However, attendance was the area in which the largest proportion of students was found to not need improvement. Continuing with positive program outcomes, the program met its stated goal of having 60% of regularly attending students decrease the number of times they were suspended. Of those frequent attendees who were suspended at least once in the previous school year, 2012-13, 63% had fewer suspensions in 2013-14. This proportion is slightly greater than that of non-frequent participants, non-frequent attendees at the Loop schools. There's a modest inverse correlation between frequency of Loop attendance and the number of sessions received. In other words, students who attended Loop a greater number of days tended to have fewer suspensions. And then finally, an analysis of MAP fall to spring gains from the 2013-14 school year showed that the average condition growth index scores of frequent participants exceeded those of non-frequent participants at the same Loop schools. And this was true in both reading and in math. And these differences are found to be statistically significant. The average CGI growth scores, 0.34, places these students at the 63rd percentile compared to that national distribution of growth. And the average CGI math growth score places these students at the 70th percentile. So that is significant growth. Areas where challenges persist, there's really only one. The program did not meet its stated objective of having 60% of frequent attendees increase their rates of school day attendance. Of those frequent attendees with school day attendance for both years, 48% increased their percent of school days attended. This increase was identical to that of non-frequent attendees at Loop schools. There's a moderate correlation between frequency of Loop attendance and the rate of school day attendance. In other words, students who attended Loop more frequently were more likely to attend a higher proportion of the school days in which they were enrolled. I have just one recommendation this year. The fall to spring growth scores of frequent participants exceeded those of the comparison group, as you just saw, in both reading and math, and these differences were found to be statistically significant. My recommendation is that program staff work with Loop providers and teachers to discuss how Loop academic and academic enrichment programming may have contributed to this outcome so that effective practices can become more established. So again, that goes back to that whole issue, how do you determine that positive outcomes are due to the program intervention? So my recommendation, let's have that discussion. And Irma can talk about the meetings that we've had with the program providers where we have asked them, what is different this year? Why do you think we're seeing this kind of improvement in students' academic outcomes? So if you have any questions, you can raise those now, or maybe Irma can do her presentation.
Well, reading this really shows a significant improvement with Loop, and that Loop is making a very good impact. It's just somewhat unfortunate that a lot of students aren't involved as they should be, because apparently Loop's got something going on.
Yep.
I like the fact that the more children are in Loop, the less absence they are in their classroom. So that says a whole lot right there. So that should say that your numbers are going up for those particular students. And so when I read this, I was excited to see all these percentages. And you had a whole lot of information, so I'm glad you didn't bring it all over here. We've been here all morning. But anybody have any questions?
Go ahead.
Did you do any work disaggregating the data based on the providers to have a sense of whether there's, differences in the providers and the quality of what they're bringing?
I haven't done that, I could. Now, some of the providers are very small, so United Methodist House has a very small program, so to compare their results for a very, very small group of students with some of the other providers is a bit sketchy, so I'm a little hesitant to do that. I haven't done it, I could do it. Maybe for future work, we could consider doing that.
Yeah, I think that would be an appropriate thing to do. I mean, I definitely understand, difference in numbers, but the results are going to be what they are. I mean, and I think it's appropriate to, even if the numbers are small, if things aren't as appropriate as the larger numbers, or conversely, if they're better performing, that still tells a story too. So I like to see that as well, though. Also along those lines, is there? I understand that 30 is the threshold for the frequent participant. Obviously, we have approximately probably about 180 loop days, I guess, roughly. Is there a way to kind of look at that data with folks who participate maybe 100 or more times versus?
Oh, yeah.
Just curious to see what that story would tell.
So the impact of dosage, for example. That's something we can take a look at, sure.
Another question. I know in the past there was a argument made of the relationship of a decline in the juvenile crime index to those hours after school. Is there a continued look at that to sort of demonstrate conversely that how valuable this?
Yeah, that's being done through the ELO with all the after-school programs, and that's still a correlation. So they're continuing to look at that.
And obviously, we know as a district how important this attendance thing is, and as far as one of the areas where challenges persist, we know that, it said that they meet that stated objective of 60% of frequent attendees, increasing rates of school day attendance. I'm curious, what sort of strategies did Loop have in mind to try to impact that? Was it just a matter of, what were they doing to try to encourage students to attend?
Besides trying to make the activities, engaging and inviting.
Well, attend school, I mean.
Oh, to attend school.
Yeah.
Well, we try to get the parents engaged, so we do like a once-a-month family activity, and we're constantly talking to them about the importance of attendance, not only in after school, but also in the school day. Just keeping that communication with the parents.
Because I just asked because obviously that was a stated objective. As a former grant operator, obviously with the stated objectives, you're going to also list what your strategies are to impact that objective. So I'm just curious what their listed strategies were.
And besides the communication, I don't remember what stated objectives, but I can get that to you.
But I think your Mayor makes a good point about providing engaging programming. I mean, students, in order to participate in the after-school program, have to have attended the regular school day. And to the extent that providing an engaging, fun program
that being a carrot
is important for kids, they're going to be more likely to show up for school day as well.
So kind of
That's
like
a challenge for all after-school programs, because the bottom line is we have to improve academics. All these students have, almost all of them have academic deficiencies. So that has to be the bottom line, but you can't just be drill and kill. Kids won't come.
Yeah.
So you have to find a way
okay,
to disguise
gotcha.
learning and make it engaging for kids and provide other things just beyond academics as well.
Gotcha.
I think our program's very good at.
So it's probably safe to say that likely the Loop providers really wanted to make Loop as entertaining as possible. Obviously, not just entertaining, but as enjoyable as possible for children, to encourage them to go to school, because obviously they didn't go to school, they couldn't participate in Loop. Gotcha. Kind of how Mr. Moody couldn't play in the games if he skipped school that day. Yeah, gotcha.
I think one of the things that I've seen in some of the Loop schools is that there's not enough workers for the need that the students present. In other words, there's a lot of students that need after-school attention that it's full, and they fall by the wayside. Would you say that that's our main programming is Loop for after-school programs, right? Aside from what schools might come up with. So how would that increase? Because if it's only 20% and you have more of those students in need of that after-school programming, particularly if it's tied to, busing and those kinds of things, that makes it
It's tied to funding,
lean
and per the grant, we need to keep a 1:18 ratio, so 1 adult per every 18 students. So that's why the cap is at 20%.
Could you maybe explain the funding formula and the current sort of politics and how it's shifted over time? And
Well, the funding is federal funding, and it comes to the state, and the state disperses it throughout the entire state for people who apply for the grant. And it depends on how the grant is written. As you know, we have additional 8 sites this year that Dr. DeBoer and I wrote for on the grant, even though we did have the high schools cut. And the funding, we disperse it because we have our 4 providers. So based on how many students they have per the 20 percentile, they get funding for staffing, for programming, and then we cover the cost for teachers because we hire, besides the staff that does the programming part, we hire our teachers from the district to do the academic portion. So funding is dispersed in that manner.
how does the state make the decisions to allocate the federal funds? How do they weight that throughout the state?
That's based on the grant, and it's based on different stipulations that are written in the grant and prior program years. So how we're doing, and if we're meeting all the stipulations in the grant, and on what new providers or grantees they're getting and what they're offering. So it's a competition.
Competitive grant, highly competitive. So we're competing with dozens of other school districts and other entities to provide after-school programming.
So it's also a point system, so they allocate a certain amount of points in the grant for everything you write for. That includes the poverty, how many students you're serving, what different, what's the word I'm looking for? What you're providing during programming. So the academic piece, the enriching piece, the health piece, there's different pieces that we have to incorporate in programming. So it's based on those things. You get points for everything you write for.
All 25 sites all do the same?
The same meaning we have.
We said Pacific programmings, so we got 25 sites.
Yep.
Do all 25 sites do the health?
Yes.
Or-
Yes. We have to incorporate, and this year we have 30 sites. So last year we had 25. This year we have 30 sites, and every site needs to have the health piece, the academic piece, the enrichment piece. So
when
Appreciate
we-
your work on the grant and knowing how competitive it is.
Pastor Moody, there is buildings are able to have a voice.
Mhm.
And so, although they all have like academic components and some of the other components, buildings are actually able to select some of the enrichment activities for kids, so that's the variation.
And every year that we get funding approved from the state, once that funding has been approved, we go through our own RFP process. So we develop our own RFP, which providers then have to respond to, and they're competing with each other for different sites. So there are certain criteria that they have to meet in order to be funded by us, approved by us. And then as we said, whether O'Neill just the superintendent just indicated, principals have some say in who those providers end up being as well.
These are GRPS students that are involved in these programs,
that's
Oh, yeah.
correct. Only.
not charter kids.
No, it's only our district.
'Cause I know-
Just another question I had, in terms of ELL, where can they participate, or is there room where that is a focus, depending on, the school, or
It depends on the school. So for example, like all the components, we incorporate them in the buildings, but we try to, they're still individual based on the building. So the building culture and who we're servicing in the building. For the academic piece, like I said, we hire our own district teachers, so they know what's going on with the school improvement plan, and they know our kids a little bit deeper than the providers do. So they focus on what's going on with the building. We also use our behavior intervention system that's done in the building. So we try to make it just a continuous process from the day to after school with making it more fun and enriching and engaging.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Priority schools updates, beginning with Alger Middle School, and then Ottawa.
Morning, Pastor Moody.
Morning.
Morning, sir.
Board, appreciate the opportunity to be here. Give me the opportunity to come speak with you. Starting in multiple different places, but first I'd like to start with, certainly a pleasure to be here. This year at Alger Middle School, we charted off to reestablish our culture and climate, PBIS and CHAMPS, along with student achievement as a mainstay. Some of the questions moving forward is ultimately placed for us regarding student achievement, that we recognize that our kids at the start of this year were flatlined in terms of their achievement, so we recognize that we had some significant challenges in improving. Through our MAP data, which was our baseline in the fall to winter, we established that we made some significant growths in our CGI regarding reading. So one of the things we really focused on as a group, as a unit with our LT team, and through our work with external data dialogues, learning walks, external learning walks, MDE coming in and visit, we understood that we needed to kind of really shift our focus and really focus on a building-wide effort on reading. Created some PD opportunities for our staff and really focused on close and critical reading and really focusing on our informational text and the data that we received that really said our reading, really improved. We really wanted to accentuate the positives. And what we incorporated as a result of that was a building-wide focus on reading that we started after January, after sitting down and evaluating what shifts we needed to make in terms of our focus. Again, while continuing our efforts with PBIS and CHAMPS, we're really still focusing on building relationships with students, helping staff and students really work collaboratively together and focus on that relationship piece. But back to our reading initiatives, we asked this simple question. Number one, with our students being school dependent, do they read after 3 o'clock when they leave us? And perception, the answer was emphatically, we didn't think they read enough. So how do we incorporate reading initiative throughout the school day between 7:30 and 2:53 when they leave? And what we implemented was a reading instructional model that every 15 minutes of every hour, we would read on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We would do some self-selected reading where students brought their own book of choice. We felt it was necessary to give them the autonomy to support their own reading strategies. Provided some training around close and critical to really support teachers and working with their particular curriculum of core to really support that effort, to really establish guided highlighted reading, focus on informational text, vocabulary acquisition. We enlisted the support, which I was very appreciative of Mrs. Evans' department in terms of Amy Pontes came out and supported our math department. Roseanne Wall came out and supported our ELA department, really giving teachers who needed specific and additional support. We understand that there's been more support asked of us to really help in that area in terms of close and critical reading. We have some teachers who are not as comfortable as others. We understood that as we embarked on this building-wide initiative. But we're excited to see how it's moving forward. We think it's really helped our climate in terms of the expectations that have been given every day. We've had some people come over and observe us. Opportunity to have an external data dialogue where we focused on this initiative and really got some insight in terms of what was needed, what's working, what's not working. So we've really tried to be transparent and moving forward in terms of how to really support our students in their reading deficits. And as we continue to move on and make changes as a result of this model, we know that, number one, we're going to continue the year with our focus on reading. And in this model, we're going to continue to build relationships positively and really meet our challenges by being transparent and really focusing. Because my goal really is to get them ready for Rodney in high school. I don't want them coming in without a sense of understanding as middle school students. We want them ready and prepared. We've incorporated a lot of things. If I can just speak on the PBIS initiatives, we had opportunity to do some Capturing Kids' Hearts training, Rodney and I. Worked with restorative practices. So now with those initiatives in place, we're trying to blend all those wonderful pieces together and make sure we're incorporating that. We've really done some circles with kids to address behavior needs and teacher relationships and student relationships and parent relationships. We still have a lot of work to do. We're open and honest about that. We're not running from any of those issues, and hopefully we can, continue to move achievement quicker as a result of these initiatives in place. So that was a quick 3-minute snapshot. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Mr. Wade,
So,
what are the 3 major things in terms of where you want to take Alger School? What are the 3 major things in reference to the kids' progress?
where I want to take them, the 3 major things. Number one, the perception to change, number one, about our student achievement by making sure it's viable and really competing with our best schools, perception-wise and reality-wise, number one. Number 2, I want, as we've talked through our feeder network systems, I certainly want the Southeast side to be represented. I want them to have a capturing focus in terms of, why choose this side of town, whether it's because we have a HBCU initiative or technology initiative or a certain post-secondary initiative that really supports what the Southeast side schools are doing. Number 3, I haven't got to number 3 because number 1 and 2 take all my time.
Okay. Any questions from anybody else?
Could you explain a little bit about the Partners in School Innovation and how they support the school?
Yes, I can. PSI has been real instrumental in helping us with our PSI network. How I use them and incorporate their support with the district is we work specifically with our PLCs on instructional practices. At Alger, halfway through the point, I made a change and split my teachers up in teams of PLCs to address and provide coaching support for individual needs around some of the things I mentioned in terms of close and critical reading. We've also incorporated through their support in the regional assistant grant, building-wide book read by Dr. Anthony Muhammad, just to address all levels of instruction and school transformation. Certainly working on classroom management and engagement, and so they really help and model for us some of the things we do to support student achievement. They've been real supportive in terms of data collecting and helping us break down the data. We've worked through them throughout each PLC. A Survey Monkey that really gives us instant feedback in terms of what teachers are needing and asking for. And so we're able to take that data and really move forward in terms of what PD support, what specific areas of focus are needed for the next week. Being a priority school, we meet 3 straight Mondays in a row, with the 4th being the GREA. And so we've really taken that time to really be in content and then grade level, as needed, get together and address our building-wide focus, and they've been a part of that from the start to now. So it's been very supportive and excited about it. So I actually have too much information, and just really trying to disseminate it appropriately and timely is the challenge.
Can you explain a little bit how parent engagement and involvement, how you've seen that increase, or in terms of parent either coming to the school or being more involved?
First and foremost, at Alger, I know for a fact, based on this year's experience, that parents will show up to see their kids perform and be recognized. So our attendance celebrations, our Black History performances, what we've done based on recognizing that in terms of increasing that participation is, we've held a couple of parent conferences on the same nights we've had celebrations to make sure we've increased enrollment. And so, that's when they come, that's when we have opportunity to meet with them and our teachers. And in that sense, we've had excellent turnout. We just recently, prior to spring break, had a Dreams and Goals Day where we got the community partners. We involved Ottawa High School. We really got the kids in middle school to start thinking about the next 5 years in terms of post-secondary opportunities and really aligning how their effort is addressing what their next 4 years are going to be like. So we felt that was a fantastic opportunity. We had speakers come in from the police to public health to retired teachers, really talk to each grade level about the importance of goal setting. We had a parent component to that where we held specifically identified parents show up and really with their child and develop some dreams and goals and aspirations on how to communicate with one another. So when we celebrate our students' achievement is when we have the major support of parents. And so we've taken the opportunity at Alger not to really, stay traditional on anything we need to do teacher and parent related. We evolve it. We combine those efforts to get the most impact of when parents can attend. So in that sense, the achievement is, the participation is up highly. So the traditional methods, not so much, which is why we changed and went to that format in terms of involving parents. So that answer your question?
Nothing real significant. I'm just curious. Can you educate me the difference between the district level data dialogue versus the building data dialogue? And I see at the building data dialogue piece, you had a few.
So
As
the process unfolds, you have external and you have internal. And internal is where the teachers really come speak with us, and we do an internal data dialogue, and we treat it as a coaching opportunity and an opportunity to really fix and promote and support what areas of growth we need internally, as well as it does with the external. To be frank, the external provides a little bit more of a stress for our people at Alger. The internal didn't as much, but it's what it is, and so it really creates opportunity to have outside observers really set structures in place for us and remind us what works, what doesn't work, and then if needed, make the proper change. And then internal, we have opportunity to really sit down, does this work, do we agree with this? And what it really does is just forces us to communicate what should be done in the first place, but it really forces us to articulate certain areas of goals and achievement that we really want to accomplish, and I think it's been real successful. So,
yeah, I see on with the building piece, I see who was present. I was looking at the district level piece, and see, this looks like you guys weren't able to do one. Is this is everything up to this year, or is this broken down quarterly? It looks like it says quarterly here.
what are you looking at?
I'm looking at the district level professional dialogues, and it has the district level dialogue piece, and then underneath that the school level data dialogue piece. And I see on your building data dialogue this quarter, there were obviously folks in your building as well as district folks as well, but then there's a category of district level data dialogue. And
Mr. Ross, I believe you're looking at the quarterly report, correct?
yes, ma'am.
That's a template provided by MDE. And where you see where it says a district data dialogue, that's actually referring to district level, but not specific to Alger. So the district level data dialogue that took place actually took place with 2 other priority schools. So that template's a little bit misleading.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Yeah, I do see that. It does say, it does say plural support priority schools, and, okay, I got you. All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem, sorry about that.
So, Mr. Witt, the reading program that you put in place, is it working pretty well with your students and your teachers?
No, I believe it is, and I also believe that, along with that, there's areas of improvement. With everybody saying the same types of expectations with the first 15 minutes, there's a different type of order. Do we have 100% excellent participation? Absolutely not. Are we getting there? Absolutely. And so we know that if anything, as this really started March 2nd, there's going to be some challenges, but I like the direction it's going. The changes we have made to really support students and families, because we've been out in front of parents and they support it, and making sure that we're providing a proper professional development for our teachers to be comfortable moving forward, something that we'll continue to do and do better to make sure that we're addressing achievement from the reading standpoint.
Have you seen an improvement in attendance at Alger?
No, it's a great question. It's sporadic, but yes, some of the kids that, well, as it relates to reading or overall?
Overall?
Yes, I mean, they're there every day, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. So consistently, there is some sporadic deficits that we're addressing with our family support, but overall, there's been a steady improvement of attendance.
Anyone? Thank you, Mr. Wade.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Morning, Pastor Moody.
Good morning, sir.
I am representing Ottawa Hills High School as the leader of that school. And I'm going to speak to you about our priority school process and how we are performing and prospectus to that. And I'm going to give some very general information to you because the data that has been brought to us thus far is embargoed from a testing perspective. But when we look at, well, let me start first by saying that we did undergo the start of the Michigan Merit examination process, and we did get excessive of 95% participation with the students that we had to actually test in that process. We are embarking on currently a process, the second step to that process, which is called M-STEP, and we're in the makeup stage of that process right now. So today, tomorrow, and Thursday, we'll be finalizing that process. The goal there is to ensure that we also capture that 95% participation rate. That's the only way we will be able to move forward in the process of actually being able to participate in the top to bottom process as it's stated. We did have some baseline data that we looked at from fall when we measured our ACT scores based on gains data. We were at a 14.2 overall for 11th and 12th graders that have to take the test this past March. And we have some preliminary numbers that show that we've made some significant gains in that process. We have been able to, over the course of the year, do two different interim assessment processes to see where students were all along the way as we continue to put in interventions to help support that process. Some of the major interventions that we did to support the students that actually had to take the test was we had an academic strategies class that supports all content areas as it relates to the ACT process, but also the writing component as well. And we built in a reading process to look at how our students, or how we can move our students from a fluency and comprehension perspective. And students were actually able to track their own progress all along the way to see what kind of gains they were making from a fluency perspective, as well as a comprehension perspective and within that class. Additionally to that, we were able to do some pre and post assessment, weekly pre and post assessments in classrooms, cater to skill gaps that the kids had based on the initial gains assessment that we had this fall, as well as this winter. So this winter, We were able to see some gains from fall to winter, but we still were quite a bit away from the goals that we had established. So we did have to put in some additional support processes or interventions to help drive achievement so that we can initially recognize the gains that we currently see today. And some of that took place through some professional development that I had with my instructional leadership team in Chicago with the Gaines organization. We went down there in Chicago, spent Thursday, Friday with them, and they were able to work through some concepts and processes for us to put into not only our academic strategies class, but also our school-wide process as well. So with that being said, we have made, based on how we measure the ACT process, we have been able to make some very significant gains in that process. We did put in some of the strategies that we utilized. We had our academic strategies I talked about. We had school-wide pre and post assessments. We did put in close and critical reading strategies as well as guided highlighted reading. And then the last piece that we always do, probably a week prior to the actual assessment, is we do a 3-week boot camp to really have an intensive engagement with kids to actually help move achievement and bring back some concepts we may have learned in the fall, but just putting them back into their presence prior to the test so that they go into the test feeling pretty well from a confidence perspective. So that's where we are from a performance perspective. Do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, what has been the most difficulty in your reading and writing areas?
Reading would be, I think, fluency. I think we struggle with, the test that we undertake is a 3.5-hour reading test, and if students can't get through some of those passages in the time that's allotted, then they struggle. So one of the biggest challenges with reading is just the fluency piece. When we look at writing, I think across the board, when we look at the organization of students writing, there's various categories that they use with ACT, but organization seems to be one of the areas that we struggle with.
Is there anything put in place to help them improve the writing and the reading if you have a program for them? You have only so many hours to get the program done, correct?
Yeah. So what we have done over the course of time, when we were a SIG school, we had extended learning time built into the process of our school. We had additional 15 minutes built in. For that time period, we utilized SSR, which is sustained reading, during that time to drive that process. But we've also, since that has ended, we've also tried to continue that within our academic strategies class and build in not only that component, but also a component that deals with the comprehension process as well.
Yes, if I can just add to that. Part of the goal with the curriculum specialist is to create the program preschool all the way through 12th grade. And so it's really getting people to work together so that we're taking care of the issues that we have at high school, but we've also started to address the issues at preschool. So we have, in the area of ELA, we have 2 curriculum specialists that are a part of Carolyn Evans' team, and they're working with principals so that we can build it from starting with our preschool students. And the academic team, they meet on a weekly basis, and that includes the curriculum specialists as well as the executive directors, so that we can start filling in some of the gaps. But unfortunately, we're trying to work it at both ends still.
So what's working right now, though?
Or specifically for Ottawa Hills?
Well, I'll just say, that what we're doing in the classroom from our academic strategies class, we can see gains in our reading score achievement as is measured by the Michigan Merit Exam in the specific subgroup of reading.
We just had testing not too long ago, correct?
Yep, well, so we went through a process in March, and we're currently going through a process right now.
When do those scores come out?
We don't know. Normally the state, it takes a while for the state to get the results to us. We did just get information from 2010, just last week, from the state of Michigan, and so it takes a minute for the state to give us the data.
I do like what you're describing as a loop where, you know, the high schools can go back to
Right.
the other schools and say, hey, this is what we're having to either help do or redo. And that really helps tie that,
That's
particularly in communicating and being able to, you know, to work together and learn. So that's great.
And that really is from your transformation plan. That was a goal of the 2 comprehensive high schools. And it was so that we could build a feeder pattern. And so we have a group of schools on both the southeast side of town as well as the north side of town that feed into Ottawa Hills High School or Union High School. And it's having those principals work together as a feeder pattern, which is why the principal from Alger referenced working with Rodney Lewis. And then we also, the principals sit on each other's data review teams. So now they can share the information of the students that's coming to our high schools.
So there's constantly correspondence between Alger and Ottawa,
Absolutely.
reference to reading, writing, and math. So you guys meeting regularly at all to discuss and talk about that with your staffs?
We do. We have an Ottawa Hills feeder network where we meet with all elementary principals, middle school principals, as well as myself. And the biggest bucket that we're trying to work on right now is how do we impact reading throughout the network system versus looking at the individual priority schools and saying Ottawa Hills is struggling in this area, where down here at the elementary school, Brookside might be struggling. So how do we look at building the system versus building a school?
Big answer.
When Principal Alger was speaking, those literacy practices are much more challenging as a child gets older, so it begs the question, and I appreciate the deep work you're doing with the curriculum going down. And so I guess I'm asking, with those students, has there been an analysis of consistency across the elementary schools and where there might be weaknesses? And then with the parents of the younger children, is there outreach in terms of creating cultures of literacy and helping to get the parents to understand how important those practices are and that culture is?
So I can't speak to the individual schools. I will say that we've just begun the process of building the airplane, per se. We just, with bringing Mr. Wade on board, we really just got everybody infused this year in establishing monthly meetings where we meet to discuss how are we going to move achievement. So we just built a plan that is really connected back to the reading piece, but also we just did a pilot with various grade levels within each division in our feeder chain. And so we're right now analyzing what that looks like and where are the gaps and where are the deficiencies, and are they consistent within the system from the elementary, middle, and high school division. And then we can move from there to put a specific plan together to move achievement in that area. We did have our last meeting last month. We did have some ISD members come join us that were experts, per se, in the reading area to help give us some guidance to how we should look at moving this process forward.
And then if I can add, Dr. Faub, Rick Noel and I just met this morning to talk about the gaps and the need to bring parents in. There's a new position that we have in the district, and we're going to focus directly on that, especially with priority schools. But we have pulled the data for every African American and Hispanic male on the southeast side of town, looking at gaps, attendance, suspensions, and anything else pertaining to those students. We realize that we need to really just drop anchor. And so Rick and I just met just before we came down here to talk about what does that look like. So we can't just do it at a high level and hope that it works, but we really want to address the specific skill gaps that these children may have. And so you will hear more about that coming up, but it will be individual plans for individual students. So,
Connected to that, and with a curriculum audit, maybe this is a question for Ms. Evans, is there a focus both on content and practices for affirming the identities of the children?
Yes.
That's something I know research-based
That's
is
right.
so key to engaging children and adolescent in literacy practices. If both the content and across the curriculum in the other areas, if there's a recognition that the children's identities need to be affirmed and engaged in those literacy practices.
and we absolutely know that. That is part of the curriculum audit that we will go through, but we are not going to wait until we get the results. We know that to be true. We know that to be true, right? And so we have already started addressing that. One of the other positions that you will see in the district is one of diversity and inclusion. And part of that division will be for us to look through the lens. So it's not an added on, but it's just infused in everything we do as a district. So you'll see that.
Actually, I was just drifting a bit when Mr. Lewis made the statement about trying to do something for the district and not necessarily a particular school. I definitely get with that, and I started to drift to think about the post-secondary. And in my work, I know, unfortunately, don't hold me to it, but probably close to 70% of students that come from GRPS go to GRCC require developmental education, either reading, math, or English. So I just wanted to, I guess, throw out there. I know we've had the conversation at that level to have some, I guess, more robust dialogue between the two levels to determine, how that can be strengthened, because obviously everyone's losing in that regard, the students, the district, as well as, the colleges itself. So I don't have obviously an answer or set recommendations, but I guess I just throw that out there as an opportunity for more exploration, really.
I will address that because part of that is what Dr. Ender and I have talked about just recently in the past couple weeks. How do we not only increase the performance of our students attending GRCC, but the other colleges as well. And as you know, the theme for Ottawa Hills High School is our partnership with the historically black colleges. And we are pleased to share that we have had several of our students attend. And we want to make sure the students are prepared, not just for GRCC, but for Ferris and Davenport and all of the other colleges as well. We work very closely with our partners in higher ed. And so we are working to close that achievement gap so that people don't have to do rework. It's not only horrible for the colleges to have to do it, it's horrible for our kids.
No, indeed.
Right,
Indeed.
and so we need to continue to strengthen that. In the high school division in the Grand Rapids Public Schools next year, I believe that we are going to attack reading. We know that that is a struggle. Always looking for highly qualified reading teachers, and as you said, Dr. Faub, there is a difference between elementary and high school. But we want to encourage that, and we continue to work with the colleges and other organizations to help us with that. Another way to address that is through our G2G program, and that is our partnership with the colleges. Many of you sit around that table to help us figure out how do we close this gap and what can we do to ensure that our children are prepared. So,
Well, I guess, and by no means did I make that statement as a push for students to go to GRCC, but I do make it in regards to sort of low-hanging fruit and an ability to collaborate with folks in your own backyard. Now, whether they go to CC or not, is irrelevant
That's right.
for me, but I think as far as dialogue between K-12 and the post-secondary, that's probably something that can easily be done in collaboration with CC. So
I think one of the best things that has happened for Ottawa over the last several years is the fact that we've been able to build some partnerships with Davenport and GRCC, where you guys are coming on site to deliver college-level courses to our students. And when I look at the number of growth from 3 years ago to where it is today, it's pretty exciting to see that that's taking place. We're even taking it down to the freshman level now, so there'll be more students engaged in just having the confidence to be able to go to somebody's college or university and be successful.
Matthias.
Yeah, just to comment, I think in my own experience, I didn't write an actual research paper until I was in college.
That's right.
And it was an absolute horror in terms of what I didn't know, and then having to figure out all of that process
That's right.
as a freshman with, 6 classes at the time. So it's really critical to be able to expose our students to that reality, like you're saying, this college course, and this is what you're actually going to be doing, and then teaching them those skills throughout so that they have the building blocks, and it's just tweaking. But I know that my own experience was that I didn't know how to do it until I was there, and that's when I realized I didn't get what I needed. So
The beautiful part about this is I sent a kid to Grand Valley last year, and when he got on campus, he was a second semester freshman. So not only are they getting the confidence to be successful at the college level, but they're also getting the credits to even move forward and maybe graduate early, or he can use some of his scholarship dollars to go to grad school.
That's right.
Right? So, there's goodness in that partnership.
yeah, excellent.
What I appreciate the most is the fact that the schools are communicating with each other in terms of reading, writing, and math, and that you're taking the data that you're getting from Alger and comparing it to the data of Ottawa, and you're improving upon it. Because you want your children, if Ottawa is going to be a school that accepts students from Alger as a feeder school, you want those kids to come in ready and prepared to go to college. And we do have a large number of students who have attended all of our public schools who've gone off to college and have done well, especially from historical Black colleges. I have quite a few of my children have done extremely well. And those are the students who are part of Grand Rapids public schools who went and had some problems but overcame them. But I think that starting now is very important. And so the more data you feed us, the better we can help you and get you more support. I do think, however, that the partners that we have in Loop, somehow we perhaps need to ask them to up their programs in reading and writing and math, and to show some kind of analysis as to the fact that they're seeing some progress so that they can report back to you.
I think the best thing, not to say you didn't say a lot of good things, Mr. Wade, but I think a lot of things, one thing that he said is kids don't have books in their hands enough, they're not reading enough to be successful when they look at taking this standardized assessment. And so if you don't read a lot, you get fatigued, and so you can't get through some of those passages. So I think as early as we can, get as many books into our kids' hands so that they can start reading. I know we got an initiative this summer to begin a process with the elementaries and the middle school, high school, where we're working on a reading program to do just that. So.
I appreciate what Dr. Falb said earlier, and if I am correct, Dr. Falb, correct me if I'm wrong, and mentioned the fact that you are getting books that culturally fit the students. Is that what you're referring to earlier?
Yeah. But the
And-
content
yeah.
or the exercise and literacy, even if they're producing, they're doing their own research, that on some level, it's an affirmation of their own context. It's a relevance piece.
Right. And that could be included in the curriculum too, correct?
Absolutely.
Do you have all the books that you need?
We never have enough books,
Okay.
Pastor Moody.
So what do we need to do to get more books?
So the curriculum department, they do have a budget, and so we are looking at how do we enhance the libraries. But the other piece is through SAF, we have donors in this community. They've done a wonderful job in outfitting our libraries, and we continue to do that. But, kids can never have enough books. And so I think we just have to continue to work with our community partners to provide children opportunities, not only to borrow the book from the library, but to take the books home and keep them, right? They need to build libraries at home.
I remember they wouldn't let us take a book home at all.
At all. We are changing that process in the Grand Rapids Public Schools. Children need to be able to take their books home.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Lewis and Mr. Wade.
Thank you.
Pastor Moody, I'd like to get direction from you. We are at the end of our time.
Sure, you want to
We have,
take M-STEP assessment over to the next
M-Step
meeting?
here, or we could have them move to the next meeting.
We can do that. Would that be okay with you? Okay, all right. Then we'll take
Are
M-STEP
we,
over to the next meeting.
We'll move that, the articles that you requested for the Education Committee, I am almost through gathering those, and I will be submitting them to the superintendent. But just to recall, you asked for, I think by the 2nd of May, to have articles regarding reading development,
Yes.
so that the board could read ahead of our next meeting. So we will make sure that we have those to you. If you, I don't know if I have, I can scan them. If you prefer to have them in hard copies, we can get them to you in hard copies. Okay.
Monica.
Okay. But we are prepared to begin getting that information.
I think you better
to
email them to us.
Okay, all right, we'll do that.
Email them to us. But
Okay.
make sure that some of our computers can't take a whole lot of
Okay.
information, so if you.
So
send
it's
over
just as
500
easy for me
papers,
to
then-
create a notebook under these circumstances, because I do think that the articles are important, and it will be information that you will reference in the future. Sometimes I kind of like to write on my articles as well.
Any
That won't
comments from any board
happen.
members before we adjourn? Any comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
You can sneak me a printed copy.
That was a good question.
Carolyn, did you see my email yesterday?
I did, I just opened it